Welcome to a KeySmash Studios tutorial. In this video, we're going to be working on our inventory system UI. It's going to be text-based, where it just displays the name and the amount collected of that item. We're going to create an action mapping that will be used to tell the system when to display the inventory widget and when to remove the inventory widget. As you're watching, if you find this video helpful, please remember to like and subscribe. So the first thing we want to do is go up to Edit, go down to Project Settings and create that action mapping under Input. You're going to click the plus button. I'm going to call it Inventory, and I'm going to map it to I. Now we can go ahead and go back to our scene and make sure you're in your C++ classes and open up your character controller. We're going to want to go over to our header, and we want to make it to where our inventory is viewable inside of a blueprint for whenever we create our inventory widget. So we're going to scroll down to where we've created our inventory, and you just want to take the pointer to that inventory, and we're going to move it up to public, and we're going to make it blueprint read only. And you can go ahead and save that, and now we're going to actually go over to the CPP because I noticed something that I forgot to do in the last video. We want to go down to our interact function, and when our player does try to interact, we want to take our nearby interaction property and we want to set it to equal null. And all this does is whenever we interact with the area, instead of still displaying press F to do action, it will get rid of that prompt so that way our player doesn't have to stare at that prompt while they're already interacting with the object. That's just something I forgot to do in the last video, so I wanted to make sure to add that here, but this part isn't relevant to the inventory. And now we want to go over to my inventory.h, and we're going to do the same thing but with the item amounts and item names that we did with the inventory and our character. So just copy them, move them up to public, and add blueprint read only. And this blueprint read only is pretty self-explanatory, but it makes it to where we can read the properties values inside of our widget blueprint. And we want to do that so that way we can display those values onto our screen. We need that inventory pointer of the player, so that way we can access that specific component of the player. And then we need the item names and item amounts of the inventory to be readable, so that way we can say they're 5 wood or 10 stone. So that's all we're going to be doing in script, so we can go ahead and save and go back to scene. And now we're going to go over to our widgets folder in our content. I'm going to create a new one, again, user interface, widget blueprint, and I'm going to call this one inventory. I'm going to go ahead and open it. And again, this inventory is going to be extremely basic. It's just going to be text-based. So I'm going to create 3 text boxes so that way we can display each of the items in each of those slots. But before I do the text box, I'm actually going to do a vertical box. And this will allow me to better organize my text boxes as well as keep them in a specific order and allow padding between them. So I'm going to anchor this vertical box to my left center. I'm going to put its position to 0, 0, its size to 300 in the X, and 150 in the Y. I'm going to leave its alignment at 0, 0, and that's all we need to do for the vertical box. So now we can go ahead and add our text boxes. And you want to drop it into the hierarchy and make sure it's below the vertical box. I'm going to name this text box slot 1. And you want to make sure that it is variable, so that way you can see this text box and be able to adjust the value inside of the graph. From there, I'm going to set the padding to 5, and then I'm going to set the color to black, so that way it matches the color of our prompt. And that's all I'm going to do for the text box, so then I'm going to go ahead and copy paste, make slot 2, 2, and that's good, and then copy paste again, and slot 3. Again, it's really important to make sure that all 3 of these text boxes have is variable checked. And now that that's good, we can go ahead and go over to the graph. And we're going to use event tick to update our inventory slots. So what we want to do is go ahead and drag out slot 1. We're going to do get, and we want to do this for the other 2 as well. And we'll just move those down there for now. And then from slot 1, I want to set text. And then for my text for slot 1, I want this to display the first item and that first item amount inside of our 2 arrays in our inventory. So the way that we're going to do this is by casting to my character. We're going to right click on it and make it a convert to pure cast. The object that we're going to do is get player character. And I'm just going to put these down here out of the way. And then we want to get our inventory from our cast of the player. And I did it just like last week. I forgot to compile before going to my blueprint, so I need to go back to the scene and compile that code that we changed so that we can have access to those variables from our scripts inside of our widget blueprint. And now that our compile has completed, we can go ahead and go back to our inventory blueprint. And again, you want to drag from as my character, and now we should be able to get our inventory. And then from our character's inventory, we want to get the item names. So you should just be able to type get item names. And then we also want the item amounts. And these are arrays, so we need to be able to get a specific index of that array. So we can go ahead and pull out from this and say get a reference. And we're going to get a reference to the item at the index 0. And then we also want to do the same with the item amounts. And you want to make sure that the index of both of these gets match, because when we add the item, we do this at the same index in both arrays. And now we can go ahead and set the format for our text that we want displayed. So we'll just pull out from this and do append. And I want A to be the name. I'm going to add an extra pin so that way I can have a colon between my name and my amount. So my A is the name, the next part of the string is a colon between them, and then the amount is going to be that final part. And now I can take this return value and drag it up to in text of my slot 1. I'm going to just drag this a little bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my other 2 slots, but I'm just going to copy paste this part because it'll be the same except at a different index. And I'll scoot it down. You want to make sure to take this target and bring it back to your inventory. And you want to adjust the index of both gets. And then we'll drag another set text off of slot 2. You want to drag the execution from that block to this block, and then we'll just drag this down and drag the return text here. And again, this is getting the item name at index 1 from our inventory and the item amount at index 1 from our inventory, putting them together in this append, and then setting the text of slot 2 to that value. So now we'll just do the same exact thing for slot 3. Once again, don't forget to drag this target back to the inventory. And then move slot 3 over and pull out set text. Connect the execution blocks and drag the return value from toText to the in text of set text. You also want to make sure, again, that you set the gets to the next index, which is 2 for slot 3. And if you have more than 3 inventory slots, you can continue this pattern with those slots as well. So now we can go ahead and compile and save. And this is everything for our inventory widgets. We can go ahead and go back to the scene and open up our level blueprint. So you're going to go up to Blueprints, open Level Blueprint. And the first thing we want to do in here is create a new variable. We're going to call it Inventory. And then the variable type for this is going to be our inventory widget. And we need this as a variable so that way we can determine if it's already in our viewport or not. So what we're going to be doing for this is getting our input action of inventory. And then whenever we press it, I want to create a branch. So that way I can check whether the inventory is already displayed and I need to remove it from my viewport, or if it's not yet displayed and I need to add it to the viewport. So the way we're going to do this is with our inventory variable. We're going to get it. We're going to check is in viewport, and we'll return that as our condition. If it's true, then we want to remove this inventory widget from our viewport. So we're going to drag out from inventory. We're going to do remove from parent. And then we're going to connect the true to that one. If it's false, this widget is not yet displayed, then we want to display it. So we're going to create an inventory widget. Make sure to select class inventory. And then we also want to set our inventory here. So you're going to go up to your variables, drag it out, set inventory. For its input of inventory, you're going to give it the return type of the created widget. And then from there, we're going to add to viewport. And the reason we set our inventory variable to the created widget is so that way we are aware it is in the viewport whenever we try to remove it from the parent. If we didn't set it to that created widget, whenever we checked if it was in the viewport, it would be false, and then we would just constantly create the widget over and over again. And this is all of the code for our basic text inventory. Again, whenever you press I, it checks to see if your inventory widget is already displayed. If it is, then it removes it from the viewport. If it's not, then it creates a new one, sets that created widget to our variable inventory, and then adds that to the viewport. So we'll go ahead and save this and go back to the scene, and we'll go ahead and test and play. And so now if I click I, you can see it displays my inventory as empty. If I click I again, it goes away. If I go over to this tree and chop it down, and now I click I after it says finished interaction, you can see I have 7 logs. And we'll go over to this fishing spot and press F again. And then once this is finished interaction, you can see that it adds to my fish. So as a recap, we changed some of the properties inside of our C++ scripts to blueprint read only, so that way we can take that inventory information that we're already keeping track of in our C++ classes and communicate it to our blueprint widgets, so that way we can display that information onto the screen for our player. We also used an action mapping so that way the player could decide at any point to remove this widget from their viewport or to add it back. As always, I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments, or you can join our Discord and ask them there. We make videos here every Wednesday and Saturday, but we also stream games on Twitch Monday through Wednesday, so if that would interest you, please be sure to check that out. We also created an app on the Google Play Store, and we have a Kids Toys asset pack on the Unity Asset Store. If any of those things interest you, or you would like to support us in any of those ways, I will provide the links for all those things in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.